I'm a god.
Well, what if there is no tomorrow?
I'm a god.
There wasn't one today.
Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of It's Time to Rewind, a podcast stuck in its own time loop right along with the movies we discuss. In this season, we're taking a look at Groundhog Day, after day, after day, after day, after day. I'm your host, Bubba Wheat from Flights, Tights, and Movie Nights, and in this episode we're discussing Phil's 10th Groundhog Day that starts at 49 minutes and 27 seconds, with Phil fantasizing about living in the mountains in 5 years, and ends at 55 minutes and 35 seconds, with Phil getting slapped after telling Rita he loves her, but doesn't even like himself. Today, once again, my guest is Sean, host of Next Scene Podcast. How are you doing today?
You don't know me. I mean, yeah, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me back. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I think this is the biggest day here in your section of Groundhog Day and your multiple guest spots here, and there's a lot going on.
Yeah, so we get another crack at dinner that we saw in the last loop, and Phil gets another crack at reacting to Rita, the 19th century French poetry expert, and yeah, we get a little bit of hint of what you could do with eternity if you have the same day over to repeat over and over again. You might learn some French. You could learn a foreign language. Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, and of course Phil recites a stanza of a poem here. It's not actually a poem, but it's actually lyrics from a French song from Jacques Brel in 1957. And even though I did take 4 years of French in high school, I'm not going to try to repeat the French lyrics today, but the translation is: "The girl who I will love is like a good wine, which gets better a little each morning," which is, I think it's completely fitting to this movie and what's going on right now, because at least in Phil's mind, the date is getting a little bit better each morning, or technically afternoon and evening, right?
Sure.
At least until it gets a little bit better until it doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, you never can know with Phil, and as we'll see by the end. So yeah, I mean, earlier we were asking if Phil feels lucky, and I was thinking, well, maybe Phil does feel lucky, and I think through much of this day in this loop, presuming, we don't go back to the beginning every day because that would make a very long film if we tried to do that. But I guess we can presume that up to this point, the drinks at the bar and a little bit of maybe some fudge, but no white chocolate, and then a nice dinner with a little, some French lyrics. Everything is going well. And then somehow Phil manages to, pull defeat from the jaws of victory and turn it around at the end. But at least for most of this day, things go very, very well. So maybe Phil has figured it out. You think maybe we're going to wrap it up. Maybe this is a very short film. So you're thinking, all right, what's next? Phil has won his, the object of his affection, the woman in his life, Rita, and isn't this great? And then, as the viewer, we get hit with the metaphorical slap in the face as Phil gets hit with the literal slap in the face, which is one of the things we did on my podcast on Groundhog Minute. I kept track of the number of times Phil got slapped. And so for those keeping score at home, we'll wrap up. I'm jumping right to the end. We'll wrap up this section with the second slap. Well, I don't know if the first one counts. Like the first one, he asked for it, literally. He's saying, slap me, which Rita is all too ready to do. He doesn't literally ask for it. this time, but he's kind of asking for it.
Yes, this is where we really see predatory Phil.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it really starts off whenever they get inside and he asks, and like Rita says that she should probably go, and then he asks, well, where would you go? And it really reminds me of the Christmas song, Baby It's Cold Outside, where you have, the dichotomy of, the people who write the song, the people who perform the song, and the people who enjoy the song that feel like it's a very sweet and romantic song. But then you also have the other side of people, especially more nowadays, really see the creepy, predatory undertones.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly how Phil's Where Would You Go comes off, because he thinks that it's kind of romantic. He's just like being playful. But really, Rita really gets the more predatory vibe, where he's really trying everything he can to keep her here, despite the fact that she, as the night goes on, more and more just wants to leave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got it. It's a very icky vibe, and I presume that's got to be on purpose to kind of set it up. But that's sort of there's no place there's no place for you to go other than with me. There's no one for you. I'm the only one who's going to love you. And this is a lot more. He's just saying, where would you go? But I hear it's no one else cares for you but me. There's, you've got nothing in your life. So, I'm the only good thing in your life. So you shouldn't go anywhere. And it comes off it very, very demeaning, very insulting, a little bullying, and kind of Rita has the same negative reaction.
Yeah, I feel like you could take this entire day almost and translate it into a 90s sitcom, and it would be the Very Special Date Rape episode.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not in terms of going back to the persistent question of how many loops how many loops has Phil been through, and how many days has he spent in Punxsutawney? Like, I'm not sure. Like, it kind of blends together in terms of, is he messing this up because this is the first time that he's gotten this far, the first time that he's kind of got Rita up to the room, and so he doesn't know what to do? Or is this like the 50th time? Is this something like he's reached this position so many times that he is starting to mess it up, and he's starting to skip steps, and he's starting to rush things? And it's something that, maybe playing the piano, when you get really good, you can just play the song faster. Or, there's a deleted scene where he's shooting pool. And I think there's some scenes that show him bowling. Maybe, those are kind of activities that the more you practice, the faster you can go. In terms of like the seduction, at least for Rita, just because you have practiced it and you know all the points doesn't necessarily mean you can speed it up and go faster.
And I mentioned this once before in the show, but I think it really relates very, very closely to like the old NES era games, mm-hmm. like something like a Battletoads, where you get just one chance to play, and then as the better you get at the game, the farther you get into it. But then at some point, if you get like almost to the end, like you get to the boss, and then you die at the boss, and you have to start all over again because there's no continues, then it's like, mm-hmm. you get to the point where you start getting frustrated, and then you start making mistakes on earlier levels just because you were like so close the time before, and you've practiced it so much, but you're just messing up on the earlier stages. It's like, I've never lost on stage 2 before. Why did I die on stage 2?
Yeah. So maybe there's a little bit of that happening for Phil here. So speaking of, you mentioned that, of course, the lines that the poetry that Phil recites in the restaurant are a Jacques Brel song. But also when they're outside and they're kind of walking around in the snow in the gazebo, the music playing, the Ray Charles song is like it's like just enough on the nose, like almost too much, where he's saying, you don't know me. You think you know me so well, but you don't know me. And of course, neither one of these people know each other because Phil's acting like this is an act. He's putting it on. So Rita doesn't know him at all. And this whole time, like for all the time that Phil has spent with Rita, especially up to this point, he's doing his script in his head. He's doing his experiment and what pieces he can put together to seduce her at the end of the day.
Yeah, he's just getting to know surface level Rita. Like he's never getting deep in a deep connection. Mm-hmm. Like he may know, dozens upon dozens of facts about Rita's life that he's been able to glean off of his various questions and various repetitions, but he's not really getting to know her.
Right, because everything has the ulterior motive of, getting her up to the room and getting her in bed. It isn't really trying to get to know her.
Personally, I think that this is actually the first time that he tells Rita that he loves her. And then it immediately leads to his admission of his own self-hate. And I think that moment is really true to Phil. And I think that is an important step in his personal development. And I think that is really what causes his spiral out of control and why he loses control of the date and starts to go into his depression that we're going to see in just, a few days from now.
Yeah. One of the things that's interesting in watching the film and thinking about and talking about the film is like, what would I do if I was in this position? What would I do? How long would it take me? Assuming that eventually I kind of reach, this sort of stage of enlightenment that Phil reaches at the end. Like how messed up would I be? What wrong things would I do? How quickly would and how quickly would I reach that stage of depression where I'm just trying to end it? And then how long till I get over that and so forth. And part of it is, how comfortable are you with yourself? Because you're kind of alone. In one sense, he has this whole town that's sort of his playground and all the people in it. But in another sense, because no one remembers what happens from one day to the next, he's the only one that's going through this. So in another sense, he's very alone. So how much time can you spend with yourself before you go crazy? And is it kind of better if you don't like yourself in the beginning, then you kind of go crazy and you get over that part quicker? Or if you like yourself enough, then maybe you never go through the real crazy and the real dark parts and you kind of get to the enlightenment stage quicker that way. I don't know, but certainly that's a big part of it, of Phil's journey, is that he doesn't even like himself.
Yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised if, whenever he says that, I don't think that it's just a line like it's, like the marriage proposal to Nancy. Mm-hmm. I think in his mind, he thinks that he does love Rita. Mm-hmm. At this point in time. It's how Rita reacts to that. It doesn't make him realize that it's not love, but it plants the seed of doubt that will grow over the next few days.
Yeah, it's very, I think of the word performative, that he's like, well, if I kind of check all the right boxes, I'll get the right thing. But that's a very surface level. It's interesting. It just made me think of a series I watched recently on HBO Max called Made for Love, and there's no time loops. It isn't really connected, but it's about a woman who's married to a man. He's kind of Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg type technical company billionaire tycoon, and she's his wife, and he calls it the hub. He's created a virtual world, and he keeps her inside. She's a prisoner. He has her in this virtual world. He never lets her out. And like in his mind and on paper, she has everything because he can, transform the scenery to anything. It can look like they're lounging by a pool. It can look like they're on the savannah in Africa. It can look like anything, and he can change the weather, and he can kind of give her everything she wants. And so it sounds like, well, this should be the perfect marriage, but it's all like, on the surface. He's not interested. Okay, he's not asking her, what do you want? And he's just saying, well, I gave you everything. You must be happy. And Phil's kind of doing that. He's like, well, I checked all the right boxes. We had a romantic walk in the snow, and I took you to a nice dinner, and we had drinks at the bar, and we toasted to world peace, and we built a snowman. Like, on the surface, everything's good. So why wouldn't, this is kind of love. And it's like, well, there's more to it than that. It's not just going down a checklist and kind of doing the right things. It's making a deeper connection to figure out, well, what really are the right things, not just the things that feel good in the immediate, in the immediacy, or what you think the other person wants. You got to find out. Yeah. So Phil isn't really getting down into, to that level of what love really is. And yeah, maybe he thought that's what love is, and this kind of it starts to wake him up. I mean, I don't know when he says this is real, this is love. I'm not sure how much he really believes that. This is different. Like, this is more than just trying to get Rita in bed. So this does a little bit different than what we went through with Nancy, where I don't think, I don't think we're supposed to. I don't think anyone watching ever thinks like, oh, wait, he's not going to end up with Nancy. Like, that's not, I don't think anyone is surprised in the end, like that didn't last. But maybe we're surprised at this.
I did forget to mention, a couple days ago, we did see just a quick shot of Nancy in the background at the Tip Top Cafe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. She was. Yeah. I mean, did we? Obviously, we go through the same day. We see a lot of the same characters. We see her talking with. I think she's talking with Doris in the background while he's sitting there. Well, because she has to be there because as Phil is leaving, she's got to be sitting there so we can ask her like who her English teacher was. But
yeah, and I was I couldn't tell for sure. Because I do think, like you said, that like whenever she's eating fudge and like she's saying that it's delicious, there is a part of just going along, and she's enjoying herself at that point, and she doesn't want to ruin it, even though she will give the tidbit that she doesn't like white chocolate, but she's not going to say that she doesn't like fudge at all. Although I am curious if, like, whenever she says that she hates fudge, yuck, I'm curious if she actually doesn't like fudge at all, or if it's more of a I don't like eating fudge because it's too much sweet, like it ruins her diet.
Yeah. Well, I think there's some things like I know there's like the cost benefit analysis. Like, there's some things that it's not that I dislike them, but in terms of whether it's the calories or just they're not, I know this thing isn't good for me. It's not healthy. I shouldn't eat it. And I don't enjoy it that much. It's like, if I'm going to have something that's really bad for me, I better really enjoy it to
like sweet vermouth.
Yeah, like sweet vermouth. Like, so I probably don't eat as healthy as I should, and and there are some sweets I like. So I kind of get the feeling that, whereas like, yeah, maybe fudge is something that she likes but she doesn't love. So when we see her and she's going, this is wonderful. This may be the best fudge she's ever had, but it's like the best of a bad thing or the best of a mediocre thing. Like, even the best fudge isn't worth the calories, or maybe there's something in fudge that like she's going to have, some stomach distress later because it doesn't agree with her. And it's, kind of that analysis of like, it doesn't taste good enough to justify the issues I'm going to have later. Kind of she realizes like, the hypnotist has snapped his fingers and she's come out of the trance and she's like, I can't believe I fell for this. I fell for this setup. And she diagnoses it. That's exactly what the whole day has been, is one long setup.
Right. And, I was thinking about it, but, this has got to be, I would say, minimum like an 8-hour date.
Mm-hmm.
Like somewhere between 8 to 10 hours.
Yeah. I mean, it's Pennsylvania in February. It will get dark kind of early, but yeah, we've seen them from, starting with coffee and donuts to chatting to.
Well, and I'm sure they, technically you could argue that the date started as soon as they left the van, which if the Groundhog Day report is it started at 7:30, and then, we can give them maybe hour and a half to do if they do any like in-house editing at all.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be 9, even go as late as 10 o'clock. But so from 10 o'clock in the morning to 9 or 10 o'clock at night, that's a good 12 hours.
Yeah. Does he give her a break? Like maybe they have a couple drinks in the bar and then it's like, I'm going to head back to my room and freshen up and, change for dinner. And then, although I think he's wearing the same thing. I mean, I think he's wearing the same thing all day, but like, does he give her a break where it's like, all right, we'll both go back to our rooms, we'll freshen up and then we'll meet in an hour for dinner kind of thing. Does she get a break or has this been, nonstop Phil all day?
Either that or she goes, or she goes, spends a little bit of time with Larry and goes film some of the townspeople like she originally wanted to, but we never actually see her do throughout the entire movie.
Yeah, we never see her getting any of that, the B-roll, any of the townsfolk stuff that you wanted. See, that would be, if he really wants to get to know her, he would take an interest in what she wants to do.
Yeah.
But he doesn't do that because Phil doesn't like himself. What do you think about that's kind of a trope to say, like obviously like to say like, the bully is they're always unhappy or they're being bullied at home and that's why they bully other people, or like kind of the jerk is always the guy who's a jerk to everyone else is because he doesn't like himself. I mean, I buy it in this. I don't know if that's universally true. I kind of buy it in this case. I really do think Phil doesn't like himself. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that, based on what we see in the movie, it completely fits with Phil's character. I mean, he's a weatherman at Pittsburgh, but he's got his eye on the next big thing. And he's just doing what he can to get by in his mind. And I feel like he doesn't really like where he's at right now. And by proxy, he doesn't like himself because he thinks that he can be better. But his idea of better Phil is the same Phil in a better town and a better job with a better girlfriend. I feel like that's his idea of a better Phil. And then it's through the course of this hundreds of Groundhog Days that he changes his mind on what a better Phil is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I buy that.
All right, well, that's all I got for today's loop, unless you've got anything else.
No, that's. I think we've done it. I think for day 10, that's all I got.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me yet again today. Why don't you go ahead and remind everybody where they can find you online?
Sure. Well, I had a podcast where I covered this very movie, Groundhog Day. Rather than one loop at a time or one day at a time, I did it 1 minute at a time, and I called that Groundhog Minute. I had a great co-host, Dave Pallas, who covered the film with me. And you can find that at groundhogminute.com.
And as always, I am Bubbleweed from FlightsTightsAndMovieNights.com, where you can find my written reviews on over 500 superhero and comic book movies. And you can find this podcast, It's Time to Rewind, on Anchor.fm and anywhere else that you listen to podcasts. And you know what? I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, I do like myself.
I'm a god. Well, what if there is no tomorrow? I'm a god. There wasn't one today.
I could never love someone like you, Phil, because you'll never love anyone but yourself.
That's not true. I don't even like myself.